Like and subscribe, join the Discord. Now let's dive. If you've spent much time on 4chan, you would know that it's home to some of Earth's most degenerate and sentient people. And because of this, you often get mentally deranged ramblings, most of which are complete nothing burgers. But on occasion, something rises up from the depths and surprises us all. And that's exactly what happened in the case of the Grand Rapids Diner. So let's go to where it all begins. August 20th, 2019 at 1:02 a.m. from an anonymous user. 1634 Coit, Grand Rapids, Michigan. You X-Files want to solve a real conspiracy? 1634 Coit, Grand Rapids, Michigan was once a popular restaurant called Isaac's that opened shop in the mid-1990s. After the owner Isaac died from lung cancer, his widow and son kept it running for a few years before ultimately closing down and selling the building in the early parts of 2014. A strange couple in their 40s purchased it shortly thereafter with the intention of turning it into a coffee shop. They painted the exterior, put a lamp in the middle of the building, taped garbage bags over the windows, and that's how it sat until present day. It was in the fall of 2015 when weird stuff started happening. It was not uncommon to see 2 or 3 SUVs pull into the premises, bring in a group of young children, and then see the adults leave but never catch sight of the children again. The reason I'm posting this is because I was just walking my dog past the building tonight when I saw a kid about 10 or 11 pull down a corner of one of the garbage bags taped over the window and proceeding to pound on the glass as if trying to get my attention. I pulled out my camera to get a pic, but right before the flash went off, he was seemingly pulled away by someone. I stood around for several more minutes, but the building seemed empty from that point forward. The police were called, showed up, flashed their flashlights in the window, and didn't see anything and just took off. No one is taking this crap seriously. I'm telling you, something nefarious is going on here. Okay, now that's quite the claim. You watched a kid pull down a garbage bag at 1 a.m. in an abandoned diner and begin banging on the windows for help. But before he could get a photo, he was pulled off to the side by some unknown figure, never to be seen again? Creepy and convenient. A story that so far has no evidence to back it up. 4chan users responded about as expected and told OP that unless he posted a time-stamped photo, they wouldn't even take him seriously. And that's about where the thread died until an hour and a half later when OP posted the requested photo. And the fact that OP was actually there and lived near this place fueled enough suspension of disbelief on the thread for several dozen users to begin researching OP's claims, and what they found was actually shocking. Everything OP had said in his post that was verifiable was true. The diner had originally belonged to a man named Isaac, and according to sale records, it had been transferred into the hands of a man named Ray, who then began renovating the place, if you can call painting it poop brown, garbage bagging the windows, and plugging in a single lamp in the center of the building that never goes out, a renovation. And this is backed up by old Google Earth photos from the date of the alleged renovations beginning, all the way until the day OP makes his post. But as we know, this all changed according to OP that night, when for a brief moment a child inside the diner ripped down the garbage bag and began banging on the windows for help. Meaning that this garbage bag being fallen down had happened at least recently enough that the Google Earth car hadn't caught the change. And this was enough to get most of those on the thread on board and look a little bit harder. And I can't lie, I too wasn't convinced by any means, but was pretty invested in the story. And so I continued on. Researching the address of the property in question, things don't get any less suspicious. It's not owned directly by an individual, but rather via proxy through an LLC. This is not uncommon when it comes to owning a property or business, as you decrease your personal liability. So the LLC itself is not what's weird, so much so as the name of the LLC is what's weird, that being Humanix. A name that to me gave off bad vibes right away, but that also, in the opinion of many users, looks like an abbreviation for the words human and trafficking. And further, based on publicly available information, the property is in fact owned by a couple as OP originally stated, and the business Humanix generates $92,278 in revenue. Where that money is coming from and what Humanix LLC does, we don't have any idea, but it's definitely not the coffee shop that the neighborhood was told was going to be there. Since you know, it's abandoned. But hey, that's still not really proof, Cooper, you say, and that's fair, it isn't. But it does give a lot of credence to what OP says, at least as relates to the background of the place, but not so much about the trafficking claims, or so we might have thought. As we discussed, this building has been seemingly untouched for years. Every single day, everything is in its place. Until the day OP shows up and sees the child begging for help. At that point, one of the garbage bags comes down and stays down. As anyone would know, it will be more suspicious to fix it, especially since we know OP had taken a photo. But it's actually in his second photo, the one with the timestamp, that something happens. On Wednesday, August 21st, 2019 at 12:33 a.m., and Anon posts the following. Does no one notice there is someone standing behind the door in the first picture? A leg or something is silhouetted against the light in the gap in the bottom of the garbage bag and the door frame. It is not there in the timestamp picture. That's right, while everyone was still yelling at each other using expletives I didn't even know existed, they had all been missing something. Inside the restaurant, there had been a movement. On the front door, there's a garbage bag blocking the window, and for the most part, you can't see a single thing, except for a little sliver at the bottom that reveals what looks like a leg or a lampstand. And in either case, what's undoubtable is that in the first image, whatever this is present, but in the second image, it's gone. Meaning that in the time since OP saw the child, took the photo and called the cops, something or someone had moved within the building. The same building that by all appearances had been untouched for years except for the occasional suspicious van. Now that is weird. For the most part at this point on the thread, everyone was behind the idea that something was going on here. Either OP was LARPing or he was actually onto something. So users decided to dive further and uncovered even more details. If you look up the owner of the property in Humanix on LinkedIn, he's an IT guy who's held some executive roles at a number of major companies. In other words, a fairly powerful dude. Yet he's simultaneously reporting income from a strange LLC named Humanix that, as far as we can find, has never created or sold a product or service, and has nothing but a rundown shack to its name. And it's also listed nowhere on his LinkedIn or general business history. Weird, but more likely this is some fraud of some kind than a pedo ring. So let's continue. The following day, a new thread was started where people continued to dive into what they could find. And there, another address popped up for Humanix, and this was their filing address. A small home in a slightly secluded area appears with a few white vans sitting in the driveway, matching the original description OP gives, stating that he had seen SUVs or vans pull up outside the diner with children. At the same time, another address is found for the business registration, leading to an entirely different home outside of Cedar Rapids, the city where this diner is. This home was much more substantial, coming in at just under 6,000 square feet, sitting on a couple acres with some nice tree cover and completely out of the sightline of neighbors. Not to go off track, but if you weren't convinced our economy was up a creek without a paddle, this house sold in 2016 for $357,000, and less than 10 years later, it's now got a nearly $1 million evaluation, despite not having been renovated since the 1980s. But that's not the problem we're here to solve, because now we know that those vans outside of the abandoned diner that OP had discussed weren't actually made up, meaning that there's a little bit more evidence backing up his trafficking claims. At this point in the case, things are pretty darn convincing, but there are a few details I've left out for the sake of continuity. The first is that the diner is located in the center of a very residential area, meaning there are all sorts of homes and prying eyes pointing directly at it. Additionally, on the north and south ends of the diner, about 2 and 3 city blocks from the front door are giant churches, which altogether made people think that there's no way something like this could be going on. But in my mind, that's why it would work so well. The occasional kids in vans could easily be chalked up to a youth retreat, and the fact that we naturally assume nothing amiss could be going on in such a normal neighborhood makes for great cover. And it's true that often the best place to hide something is in plain sight. But right now you may be thinking that the hidden in plain sight idea is a weak argument for how a pedo ring is hiding in a neighborhood. As it's true, the center of a neighborhood is not quite as convenient a location as an island for such things. That is, unless this wasn't your average neighborhood. So let's do a quick search. By going to this website and typing the address of the diner, we notice that there are a lot of these little pins showing up everywhere. What made those be, you ask? Well, those are all known and registered offenders in the area. And don't let the colors fool you, the blue and green ones are violent offenders as well. In the red, those are the kitty touchers specifically. This blew my mind. I had never seen this many degenerates in one place. So I decided to take this a step further because I couldn't believe this was normal. This tiny, roughly 12 square mile area with some 12,000 inhabitants has more offenders than the national average for 100,000 people. And if you take the entire city of Grand Rapids, where the diner is located, the city has over 3.5 times the national average for that population size. So we are not dealing with your typical neighborhood here, or even city for that matter. However, what's even stranger is that a number of people have decided to visit this place and live stream them doing it. Now, not much is left of these streams because they have all decayed due to data rot, but what we do have are a few screenshots of the inside of the building. And unsurprisingly, as you can see on screen, the inside is extremely disheveled to the point I can't even guess what's been going on in there, except that it's most definitely not generating $92K in annual revenue, and despite what the ownership has told the public, no renovations are occurring. But it does in fact get even weirder and darker from here. None of the people who ever went to 1634 Coit Avenue in Michigan ever came back online. Not a single message from them was ever posted to any of the threads or the later Reddit posts on the topic. All of their accounts seem to have gone inactive, and it's like they disappeared. In fact, those images I just showed you were merely screen captures of the stream taken by viewers at that time. And that's really heavy when you think about it, but even scarier than that is that OP's claims of someone banging on the window are proven. In one of the screenshots captured by users watching the stream at the time, you can see handprints at about a child's height, exactly where OP had said that he had seen his child banging on the window just a day prior. Like many of the people participating in the thread at this time, I was shocked, jaw to the floor in disbelief. I so badly wanted to know more, and so I sought out one of these streams myself, especially when I heard rumor on the thread that the last person to stream from that location has suddenly disappeared while the stream was still live. And so I prayed, and after reading hundreds of degenerate comments, God did deliver this incredible link. At the bottom of one of these massive threads, there was a message housing a version of one of the streams. Not the original, but a recording hosted to a different platform. I am going to record it and upload the whole thing and save it on the Patreon, which you can join for free, if you are interested in seeing it, because I am genuinely worried that the link won't last much longer, especially after this video, and it absolutely must be preserved. I'll cut out the first 4 and some minutes because it is mostly him driving, and play the rest on screen for you now.
I think I'll just do a quick walk by. We'll take a look and call it a night. All right. Let's take a look inside. Okay, I thought I heard something back here. Nope. Okay, no.
Wow. I want to say that if this was a bit and OP is just LARPing and hired everyone involved, then bravo, sir. But I think with all the evidence we've uncovered, the idea that this is just some giant ARG or LARP has been disproven. Especially considering the Twitch account that this Anon originally streamed on has been inactive since that very moment. That's right, it's now been abandoned for 6 years, and as stated, this Anon has never returned to any threads related to this topic either. So what does this all mean then? Well, I think it means he's gone. And there's actually some evidence for this and how this may have happened in the stream itself. On my first watch through of the stream, I didn't catch this, but one user on the 4chan thread points out a suspicious vehicle he noticed at the roughly 4-minute and 20-second mark. Let me play the clip for you. That's very odd, right? The vehicle is waiting in the parking lot when the Anon arrives, as though he were guarding the place, and when Anon begins approaching the building, it then pulls out of the parking lot, and if Anon had seen it, he probably assumed it was just leaving and going somewhere else. However, in my opinion, we don't get a great shot at it, but it does look like instead of turning right and going away from the diner, the vehicle pulls out of the parking lot and turns left, meaning that when Anon ended his stream, the vehicle would have ended up directly behind him had they been there for the user, making it possible that whoever was in the vehicle is the reason this Anon is gone now. And it's also worth noting at this point that there was a point where someone pretending to be in the know said that they come with the kids at 1:20 a.m. and everyone was very suspicious. And then eventually people started getting the idea that whoever owns this diner might actually be aware of this threat at this point because of how much notoriety it was getting on the platform. And so users at the time began commenting and saying back to this person, "You're full of it, we know you're fake," or "We know it's you watching us." And then that comment about the time when the people were coming with the children ended up getting deleted by the user who had posted it. Just a weird little factoid, but it kind of implies that whoever was in that car might have also been on the 4chan thread watching all of this go down. And at this point, that is about all we know about this story for fact. So let's move on. I have a couple of theories, and I'll weigh in with what I think is the answer at the end. Number one, this is all staged. There's a lot of evidence suggesting that what OP claims he saw is real, real and something big is going on. But it can't be ignored that despite what we do know, there has yet to be anyone who has come forward and delivered us a photo of the alleged children. And the majority of the evidence uncovered is circumstantial, I'll admit, and all the witnesses are gone. And finally, the diner was eventually sold by this couple and bought by someone else, and is now a chicken shack, meaning that likely any material evidence that did exist has now been erased. But that's about the only opposition one can logically have to OP's claims, because on the other hand, in one way or another, everything OP claimed was true. That's verifiable at least. Even down to the fact that the owner of the building keeps a series of vans in the driveway of the property he uses as one of his business filing addresses. And we also know that the neighborhood is full of the kind of community that contributes to why no one would really ever see anything if something like this was actually occurring. That and the fact that the diner has a basement, a fact that later groups of users found out, which refutes the notion that there's no room for the kids in this building or that it would be too obvious. Because if what OP says is true, the basement is the likely holding place and the first floor where the garbage bag blocks out the windows is just a cover. So perhaps that child had come up from the basement, somehow escaping, and took this as their last chance to hopefully get the message out. And these are just a couple of examples, we could come up with many, but it is important to emphasize that not a single part of OP's original claims have failed when research was applied. And so, although I think it's probably obvious at this point what I believe, I won't sit on the fence here, and I'll just tell you that back in the early, mid, and late 2010s, the Grand Rapids Diner was hiding something, a very dark something. And I have some thoughts on that for those of you who are on the fence or are skeptical. You and I over the past 9 months of making videos have uncovered many things that don't really make sense and yet are true. From the government operating a covert AI genetic harvesting data program out of a shack on the beach in the 4.com video, to the abandoned asylum we visited live that tested on and tortured its patients only to throw their bodies into the water. We've seen some stuff together, you guys, that on paper, I don't think most of us would have believed 10 months ago before these videos started. But a little bit about my history is that off camera, I have done some other work, including infiltrating the quote-unquote Church of Scientology and accidentally dining with a Satan worshipping cult in the basement of a downtown Boston building. And there's also a host of other things we can talk about sometime, but in all these cases, I've come to learn one thing. The absolute craziest things you could never imagine are happening right in front of you. And I believe that the Grand Rapids Diner was hiding one of these things. The evidence so solidly points towards it, it's beyond coincidence. And take this or leave it, I couldn't find a good place for this little factoid in the rest of the video, so I thought the end would be best. This is more circumstantial than anything, but the name of the street the diner is on is Coit Ave. Coit is an abbreviation of the French word coitus, which means sex. And if you know anything about American history, the French originally colonized the Michigan territories, meaning the diner OP claims is hiding a Diddy dungeon is on a street named Sex Ave. So all in all, there's too much evidence here for me to believe that everything is just completely normal and it's all just a coinky-dink. But what do you guys think? Alrighty, you guys, thank you so much for watching the video to this point. And if you managed to make it all the way to the end, you are a true legend. But I have a quest for you. Before you leave, I want you to go down to the comments and I want you to type, Humanix is kinda sus. Other than that though, guys, I need to thank you because we passed 10,000 subscribers. That's an unbelievable number. 9 months ago, guys, I had 100 subscribers and then everything has been blowing up since then. And I could not be more grateful. So I just want to take a second and once again, thank you guys so much for bringing me all the way here. And I can't wait to see where this whole journey takes us. But first, remember, since we've been talking about the Grand Rapids Diner and the other 3 people went missing, just want to say I love life and I'm not going anywhere. And with that being said, I can't wait to see each and every one of you guys in the next one.